Folks, welcome back to Pew 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 Tube. I am Kevin Inoue of Fight Designer LLC. It is week, I don't even know anymore, of the lockdown. I've got a Girl Scout camp in my living room right now. If you hear singing, that's why. How are you hanging in there? A couple things I want to talk about today. One, the main thing for today is going to be about shell-ejecting airsoft props. But also, just in terms of announcements, I have in this little buddy. Finally came in. Screen Combat Handbook. Officially came out May 8th, but I just got my copy today. What is today? The 14th, 15th, something like that. It's nice to feel like it's finally real. I mean, the ebook is sort of real, but this is real. And it was interesting to me because they said to plan on it being the same size as the Theatrical Firearms Handbook, which I came out with in 2014, but it is a little taller. It's a little interesting, and it's I was supposed to plan for the same word count, but it's also thinner. I don't know how much that balances out. And a slightly different finish. They went for this matte finish instead of the glossy. Maybe that'll curl a bit less in humid climates. I don't know. We'll see. I look forward to hearing some feedback on that. So if you do get a chance to check it out, by all means, please leave a review on Amazon. That's where most folks go for their reviews, or Goodreads or Routledge or wherever. Right now it's cheapest directly from the publisher at routledge.com. Plus, then you don't have to be worrying about that extra money going to Jeff Bezos to become the first trillionaire in the world. She doesn't need to be. He's not paying taxes. He's not helping out with a lot of things. So, you know, might as well support either directly to the publisher or find your local bookstore, order through them, see if they have some way to do that through an independent bookstore. Because a lot of those companies are really struggling right now. So find the way to support the people that you want to make sure are still around in a couple of years. And if you can do that, props to you. Also, feel free to contact me directly if you have feedback with the Theatrical Firearms Handbook. When that came out in 2014, I had a couple of months before the ebook version came out, and I was able to sneak in some minor corrections and typos and things, get those fixed before that came out. And then when they did the reprint in, I think it was 2016, I was able to even sneak in some updates and stuff. So that was pretty cool. I don't know if I'll get to do that again, but I might. So if you do read the book and if you have some suggestions or some thoughts or some observations, by all means, please let me know. I didn't really get a technical editor with this book. I got a copy editor, but I didn't get editors who know the field. So if you come across something and you're like, hey, Kevin, I'm not sure about this thing because over here we call it that or whatever it is, by all means, please let me know. I'd love to hear. Main topic for today, though. This was interesting because it was prompted by a props rental. Crazy, right? I mean, pretty much everything's shut down. All the plays are shut down. Most of the sets are shut down. But I had someone out in California who wanted to rent specifically some shell-ejecting airsoft props. So I sent them three things. So it was a shell-ejecting shotgun that was pump action, which worked just fine for them. Those have been pretty reliable. The gas blowback shell-ejecting 1911, STI licensed, and these sort of battery-powered M4s that eject plastic casings. They're really cheap kind of toys, frankly. They're not quality airsoft guns. They're not like the $1,000 gas blowback airsoft that use the casings that are the really nice ones, but that cost as much as a nice high-end M4 would, or AR-15 rather, because I'm not buying M4s. So, you know, but those have been pretty idiot-proof to me. I tested all of them before I sent it out. So what I've got to share here are I've got some videos before I sent them out, and I've got some videos after they came back. And so I'll throw some of those up just to kind of show, because I had to test them anyway and make sure. Now, anything that does cycle casings is going to have more of a chance of jamming in one way or another. And the more things that depends on, whether it's motors, whether that's the force of a blank or a cap or something like that, whether it's things having to feed in, things having to eject, the more things that can go wrong, obviously, the more chances things will go wrong. So a lot of these things will at some point fail or jam. But I do try to test them before I send them out, and I test them when they come back, because it's important to me to make sure that I'm doing my best due diligence, and I'm doing as much as I can. In this case, I did as much as I can. One of the things worked great for them. Two of them didn't. One of them I figured out why. The other, I don't know, worked fine for me coming in and going out, so I'm not sure. So I did offer them a little bit of a kickback on some of the expenses just because of that. But, you know, these things happen, and especially when I'm not personally on set to gun wrangle, there's only so much I can do. So let's take a look at some of these, and we'll see some of the ins and outs of some of these models. Hey, just doing a quick test of these before I send them out, just so the client knows, and because I haven't tried these out in ages, we'll see how they work. So these were an interesting experiment. They are electric blowback, shell-ejecting, cap-firing toys. So they're more cheaply made than some of our props. For example, buttstock pulls right off. in several parts. It's kind of cheaply put together. These do break if you're not too careful with them. They're pretty lightweight plastic. The magazines they come with were undersized. I custom built an extension to this one to make it look a little bit more like a real size one. I put a rubber end stock on here to make it look a little more like a real size one. It's not a standard rail, so I had to modify a little bit and get this cheap sight to fit on here. But the way it works, we've got little plastic shells that can hold BBs in the front. Obviously, don't do that if you're using them for props use, so keep them nice and empty in the front. And then there's a place in the back where you have a little plastic plunger thing, and you can put just normal little circle caps on there, little cheapy plastic, you know, cap gun caps on those to give you sometimes a little bit of a bang if you want to try that. But it's actually an electric motor mechanism that cycles it, so you do have the motor noise still. But the caps give you a little bit of smoke sometimes. So we'll try a couple of these. There's like a little safety, basically, is this electric button built into the middle finger grip here. So you got to push that down. There is no working safety or anything on this. So push this down, then pull the trigger. And I've tried this a while. I did just charge it up for just like 5 minutes, so it's not very charged. But I just wanted to make sure it still works before I rent it out. So let's give it a shot. There goes one round. Here's another. Let's try the other side so you can actually see the camera maybe. Looks like. Now, as with all of these rarer models, it is kind of hard to find casings and things like that. So replacement parts are a pain. So we want to try and make sure that we're not losing any of the caps or any of the shells or anything. The caps themselves are just cheap. So that's easy. And actually, in this case, none of them went off. They got pushed in a little bit, but they didn't go off. I think they're probably just old ejecting that that's why. So I'd have to dig them out and try and put something else on there if I wanted to actually make a little bang. But for those of you who want shell ejecting, this is a heck of a lot more idiot-proof and simple to use and load, and a lot cheaper than the MGC or other model gun options that use the 7mm caps that are impossible to find now inside the brass casings. Those are much more mechanically accurate. This is not mechanically accurate at all. There's no charging handle. It's, you know, the dust cover doesn't move. There's no safety. It's, you know, again, these are not as realistic replicas, but it's going to be the cheapest, easiest way to get a little shell casing spinning out if that's what you really want. It's all about priorities and what you're willing to CG and what you're not. This is the STI Shell-ejecting 1911, the gas blowback. So there's kind of two different valves in here. You want the forward brass one when you're loading this green gas. I don't know if you can hear that hiss. Yeah, that one leaks. So this magazine's toast. It's probably just the seals, but I don't have time to fix that before it goes back out. So I'll have to pull that one out. And this is part of why these things are expensive to rent. That's because you end up having to replace this crap half the time. Let's try this one. Now when you're loading these, it's really only like a half width blank. Kind of the back half is gas and the front half holds these casings. So the little lip goes towards the back, the opening towards the front. So they slide in here. And for safety, for what we're doing, just make sure there's no little BBs in there or anything in there. It should be completely hollow all the way through. I'm not going to lose them as much. Hey. But it didn't slide forward quite right. There you go. So this one is sticking a little bit on the forward. Just might need to try a different gun on this. Try like 4 of these. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Should be one more. 8. And we're at slide lock. So this one's working fine. We'll just need to pull the orange thing off. So that's a good magazine. Third magazine to test. So far we've had 1 good mag and 1 bad mag. Let's see if we can do better than 50%. Oh, that's my can starting to dry there. All right, testing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So this magazine is also holding it at least well enough to be able to get through a magazine. So things that'll help, I'll go ahead and put some fresh silicone oil on these before we send them out. But keeping things lubricated with silicone oil helps. I wouldn't use things like WD-40 or some of the just standard gun oils, just because these are plastic, and sometimes those can degrade the plastic and rubber, since you don't have those in real firearms. But I'll lube it up, make sure it's nice and loose, and you'll have 2 magazines full with dummy rounds. And just try not to drop or lose things. They won't hold gas forever, so go ahead and fill them up shortly before you're ready to go. Controls are basically the same as on a real one. So you've got a slide release here. You've got a functional thumb safety here. Will not fire. You've also got a grip safety here. So if you're not pushing in on the back of that, the trigger won't go. Right. So you need to have both safeties off for this to function. Magazine release here. And it will lock back when it's out of ammunition. Same as the real deal would. Single action, 1911s are, which means that if it's not cocked, it won't do anything. So it does have to be cocked back to go. But of course, when you first chamber around, that motion of the slide should cock the hammer back, so it should be ready to go as soon as you actually rack it and go. I don't know who your character is or what situation they're coming from, but most people who carry 1911s carry them what's called cocked and locked. So hammer back, safety on, and so then when you're ready to fire, you just pop that safety off and you're ready to go. Now, the shotgun that I sent out was one of these APS CAM870s. I've got, I think, 3 of this particular brand. So the traditional wood stock, more like a hunting shotgun, pistol length breacher with a folding front stock, and this one which just has a folding rear stock. A little stiff, also telescopes if you want, and it's just a standard 870 pump action, nice metal receiver. And they didn't have any problems with this one at all. So I also talked about some of these shell-ejecting shotguns in a couple of previous videos, including the one on sounds of pump shotguns. So I'm not going to spend time going over this again because it worked just fine. Hey, just got these props back. They were well packaged. So things got loose in the trip, but that happens. Just had to tighten up the mag well on this and the front bead on the shotgun. But I did put a little gas in these because he said he had some problems, so I wanted to test them out. It seems to be working just fine for me. Alright, I'll need to chase that one down later. But let's just see if it'll make it through a mag. And this is the prop and magazine that went out for 5, 6, 7. Okay, so it ran out of gas on 7. Partly that might just be that I'm not using a full can. I've got a can I've been working on slowly over the past several years. So yeah, I'm not sure what the problem was. It does give a little bit of a hiss. Yeah, I had 2 rounds left before it ran out of gas. It does give a little bit of a hiss when it's loaded. It does seem to leak a tiny bit, but it should still, if you load it up right before you go, put these back in. Yeah, I'm not sure. You said you were only able to get like maybe 1 round or something before it went. No, you basically just said it wasn't working. So I wanted to try and check and make sure that I wasn't giving you bad props. So yeah, the only issue I'm seeing is that the magazine isn't holding a full thing of gas, but then again, I'm using a mostly empty thing of gas already. And so I don't have a new one to use to top it off. But as to why you shouldn't be able to get some multiple shots off, I don't know. It seems to be working. I've got the M4 charging right now to test that one too. So I've only been charging this for about 5 minutes now, but let's go ahead and test this one too. So this is that M4, and again, there's a little safety button here on the grip you got to push down while you pull the trigger. But let's see if it does indeed eject casings. Oh, there's chambering first one. Oh, yeah, jammed. Interesting. Let's try that again, see if we can do any better next time around. I didn't see any problem with the shells. It's not like they're cracked in front or anything. But yeah. I just felt something go pop in this magazine. I think the spring may have just gotten jammed in this magazine. I might have to figure out how to take that back apart again. Wasn't doing that earlier, but now it is. Let's try the other magazine. There was a second magazine that was sent with it. Let's try it with the second magazine. There we go. Got one out. And now it's out of power because it was only charging for 5 minutes. Alright, got this charged up again now. Got the magazine fixed, but just for sake of argument, let's go with the secondary one that I sent. Since this one I have not touched since it came back. Let's see if this works. One. Huh. Something in the way of the barrel. Well, alright. Yeah, that's what I suspected. Bits of a broken casing. So, looks like there was a round that went in and cracked into pieces. And then every subsequent round that went in was jamming into the bits that were left behind. So that white thing that I found was the inner piece from one of these rounds. So now we'll see if I've got it clear. Unfortunately, unlike a real AR, I can't just pop a back pin and tip this up and check to make sure the barrel is clear. There's really not a very good way to check the bore on this particular type of replica and make sure that it's completely clear. You can kind of peek in a little bit from the back, but that's about as good as you can get. So let's see now if it's working. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, yep. Alright, so now it works. So that answers that question. There was a bit of broken casing inside there, and that was keeping the rounds from going in and making them jam. So, problem solved. Sorry it didn't work for that gig. And while I'm at it, let's see if my job of fixing this magazine with the jammed follower worked. Yep. Looks like that got it. So it appeared this was the verdict. As we had a round, and I'm guessing from the fact that there was a bit of red plastic from a cap in there as well. What happened was there was probably an older, these are all older, these are antiques. So an older plastic round that still had a cap in it. Went in, cap set off, round itself broke into bits, and then of course when I went to eject, it only pulled out the tail end, and all the front end was still in there. So now every subsequent round that tried to load in back there jammed up against that, couldn't chamber all the way, then couldn't eject, it was still at an angle, and then the next one trying to feed, so they were all just kind of jamming up every time it tried to load. So this is part of why I am sometimes a little reluctant to rent out props that have some kind of mechanical function like this, because the more mechanical functions they have, the more things that can go wrong, the more likely they are to jam. And in this case, if I'd been there to fix it, it might have taken me a little while to figure out exactly what it was. This was a total of 5 minutes spent on it, which can feel like a long time when you're on set and people are itching and raring to go. But compared to having to ship it back and not get your shot, I feel bad about it, but at the same time, this is what happens when you don't know your props, and this is one of the problems that's inherent sometimes with renting, is that you're sending props to people who may not know these props. So this is part of why I do YouTube and try and put these things out there, is so that people can make more informed choices and can know these props a little bit better, can know some things to try when problems arise. But ultimately, the real takeaway from this, I think, is just to make sure that somebody on set knows your props, if at all possible. I do what I can, but if I'm not there, there's only so much I can do. So anyway, that's a quick look at some of our shell-ejecting props. Fight Designer LLC here. We've got I really enjoy these shell-ejecting props. I just think they're kind of cool the way they function. I love to look at them. But a lot of these are now basically collector's editions, collector's items. They're not the most reliable. They're harder to find parts for. Some of them just aren't made anymore. Some of them have already broken down, and I still have to figure out if and how I can fix them. I've got some higher-end shell-ejecting AR-15s that I just haven't figured out how to get them to run yet. One of them ran briefly when I got it used and then stopped working with a wiring issue of some sort I need to figure out. One of them never worked, but I'm not sure if it's just a fuse or something. But my electronics knowledge is not so great, and I haven't yet had the time to fiddle with them. Maybe I will this summer. Who knows? But I do have a number of other models, and you can take a look at some more of those as we go forward this summer. I recently did some work on some of the KAR World War II German Nazi bolt-action rifles that are shell-ejecting. So I'll probably share what I found out on some of those, because those have been a pretty interesting model to play with. But as always, if you have anything particular you're interested in, any questions, suggestions, feedback, thoughts, comments, concerns, you can leave them in the comments. You can email me. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, share, whatever you want. But you know, if I'm going to keep doing these, it's going to be because I feel like they're being useful to people. So if it's useful to you, let me know. If there is something that would be useful to you, let me know. If there's not, you know, let me know that too, and I'll stop. Because, hey, you know, I probably have better things to do with my time too. Until next time, this is Kevin Inoue from Fight Designer LLC, and stay safe, stay sane, stay productive. And when that day comes that we're all ready to get back into the stage and back in the rehearsal room and back on set, give me a call. Let's play.